Do you have someone in your life that you care deeply about and how you wish they would take better care of themselves? But it's very hard for this person. This person wants to feel very resilient. And I want to say that that can be a misplaced definition of what being resilient means. We all want to be resilient. I want to raise my children being resilient kids. And if you're interested in that topic, I actually did a video on the beautiful and turned toxic Filipino trait, talking about resilience. But today, how are you going to encourage someone that you love and you know that they deserve to take better care of themselves, but they feel that it's a waste of time, and they may not even understand the concept. First of all, it's important to understand before you talk to your mom, to your dad, to an ate, what they may be thinking. From the Western world, we often hear the word self-care. And now I'm sure it's more popular back in the motherland, but usually that's not something we often or commonly use. So when you say self-care, it's almost like you're taking your time. And the way we're raised, talking more about the culture, is that we are always hate. Hate is share. So that's often a teaching. Even children as early as 2 years old, a caregiver, an adult would say, "Oh, hati kayo, share, share." And so that's a beautiful thing about the culture. But to understand why that may be difficult for someone to take the time to share means that they may be the opposite of that. One of the things you want to think about is when they're taking their time, they are taking care of themselves, where they're not helping as much. The opposite of that in our culture may be called madamot or stingy, which has a lot of negative reinforcement. One would say, naku, ang damot naman ni ano, ayaw magpahiram. And someone who's always sharing is one would get a reinforcement of ang bait talaga ni Nina, for instance. So we behave in a certain way where we get either positive or negative reinforcement for the most part. So one thing you want to understand is the opposite of that. Your mom or your tita does not want to be madamot, whatever is their opposite for not helping at the moment. That takes me to the second part, which is helping sometimes could be a way to gain control of an otherwise difficult to control situation. So someone might give and give and give just because they're hoping to have a particular outcome as far as the relationship. And so giving could be a way to pacify oneself, to gain some control. So it's important to know the backstory before you even speak to your mom, to your tita, to your dad. Another one is giving is a strategy to, again, I said to pacify, but also for one to feel safer, for one to feel good enough, and so you're giving. I mean, it's all tied up to getting that reinforcement as a child. But sometimes when we're attached to being the helper and you got a lot of positive remarks as a child, ay, ang bait ni ano, ang bait ni Nina because you were a giver. So now you become attached to the identity of a helper. So one thing is that when we're attached, certain words become a noun. A helper is a noun. It becomes your set identity. The best way is to turn a noun to a verb because verb is an action word, meaning you can give right now, but it doesn't mean you're not going to be giving the next day or the next moment. And so one way for you to understand is it has become an identity, and it's hard to kind of almost like a shell. One might feel bomba, as they say, like naked. Do you know that word, bomba, if you stop helping? So, talking about how do you then encourage? A way to encourage someone is to understand all those few things I mentioned, to have compassion for them. Another one is to use their language. If they want to help their son, you say, well, you know what, to help your son more. See, you're not saying you don't have to help him, you're helping him too much, which I agree. Between you and I agree. But that might not be a language that is effective for the other person because they're so set on being a helper. So you want to use their language to help your son more. Maybe you can allow him to do his own grocery so then he could learn how to trust himself better. For example, so using their language. Another one, I'm looking at my notes here. Now, this might not be always the case, especially if somebody doesn't know how to say no, but ask them for help. You're the one asking for help from them, and hopefully there comes a time that they'll ask you for help. So that's often the case, like in the neighborhood. If you want to be more connected to your neighborhood or your neighbor, you can ask them to, like, oh, if you're gone, maybe they can water the plants outside, and that begins the circular pattern of like giving and taking, which is totally a beautiful thing. So those are a couple of things. So use their language. Then another one is also talk about probably the negative consequences. I know you love Junior, but when you help him, this happens. He starts drinking, for instance, and I know you love him so much. That's not what you intend for him. Then you go on. So you could share the negative consequences. You always anchor and know that the person is doing that. Their intention is to be loving, but basically understand it's a strategy. So you're not talking about them per se because they're so attached as being the helper, but that strategy isn't working. So talk about the strategy, talk about use their language, and also ask them for help. Now, you have to read. Sometimes people don't have a hard time saying no. So some people might just say yes, and be mindful of that. Use pakikiramdam, which is attuning to someone beyond words. They might say yes, even though they're so tired. I often notice that with some people, and then the other person might not read it, and the other person verbally wants to say, I can't do it, I'm just so tired. But they keep saying yes because they feel bad saying no. So also use attunement when it comes to that. But sharing this video, I hope it's been helpful. I hope you're doing well. This is Roanne Digia, Samuel's licensed psychotherapist. Take care now. Bye.